Welcome to another World of Warcraft Cataclysm beta video. Today we're discussing the Warlock's new abilities, talents, and changed abilities. The first thing I want to get to is the change to Soul Shards. Soul Shards are now a resource like Holy Power, combo points, and so on. You can have up to 3 Soul Shards saved at once. You gain Soul Shards by killing targets with Drained Soul, just like before, although you gain 3 instantly. You also gain Soul Shards through the new Soul Harvest, which we'll show in a minute. The interesting thing about Soul Shards is that the abilities before that cost Soul Shards, such as your summoning and other things, they no longer cost a Soul Shard. Instead, there's one ability called Soul Burn. When you use Soul Burn, it uses up one of your Soul Shards and it buffs the next spell you cast. And there are several different spells that are buffed by Soul Burn. The tooltip here is actually not complete. One of the ones that's missing from the tooltip is Soulfire. It makes your next Soulfire instant cast. So as you can imagine, that's very powerful. Now, if you kill a target with Drained Soul, you do gain all 3 Soul Shards back instantly. And the new ability Soul Harvest, if channeled out of combat, can also regenerate your Soul Shards for you. And it also heals you, by the way. The next abilities to be changed are your Curse of Agony, Curse of Doom. They've been changed to Bane of Agony and Bane of Doom. Bane of Doom no longer ticks once when it expires. Instead, it just ticks once every 15 seconds. The reason they've been changed is that they're now part of a new class of spells. Banes and Curses are 2 separate things now. So you can have Curse of Elements and Bane of Agony up at the same time. In addition to changing your Curses and your Soul Shard mechanics, they've also decided to change 2 of the spells that you probably barely ever used. Ritual of Doom and Inferno have been changed to Summon Doomguard and Summon Infernal. They're on a shared cooldown of 10 minutes, and when they summon as guardians, not minions. In other words, you can have your regular pet, and you can also have an Infernal or Doomguard. Doomguards seem to do more damage, most likely, but Infernals do stun everything when they drop, so it's up to you which one you want to use. You're moving on to the new abilities. At 81 you get Fell Flame. It's an instant cast spell that deals damage and then also increases the duration of your Unstable Affliction and your Immolate. So it's useful for any spec. The next one is Dark Intent. It's a buff very similar to the Mage's Focus Magic. You cast it on an ally, you can't cast it on yourself. And whenever one of you crits with either a damage or a healing dot, so a dot or a hot, whenever one of you crits with one of those, you gain a buff 3% to your periodic damage or healing, stacking 3 times, so up to 9%. So it's just like Focus Magic in that you cast it on an ally, and when they get crits, you buff each other. Now, keep in mind this is with dots and hots only, so you want to use it on an ally that does a lot of dots, such as a Feral Druid or a Resto Druid for hots and so on, or another Warlock, of course. The last ability is Demon Soul. Now, if you checked on Wowhead, it currently says that it requires Metamorphosis, but that's incorrect. I just wanted to point that out in case you were curious. But Demon Soul is like a new version of Demonic Sacrifice. Instead of actually killing the demon, though, your demon stays alive, and you gain a powerful buff. The buff depends on which demon you have out. With the Imp, you gain 60% increase to your Critical Strike damage, not your Critical Strike chance. Keep that in mind. And you get 3 stacks before it's used up, or 30 seconds to use up that buff. With your Succubus, you gain a 10% increase to your Shadow Bolt. With your Voidwalker, you transfer all your threat to the Voidwalker. With your Fell Hunter, you gain a 20% increase to your periodic shadow damage. So you can, as you can imagine, that's really amazing for Affliction PvP. And lastly, for your Fell Guard, you gain a bunch of buffs, including damage and so on. And that's obviously the one your Demo Locker is going to use all the time. So Demon Soul is available for any spec. Another interesting change I want to mention before I go on is that Soul Link, formerly a Demonology Tree talent, is now available to all Warlocks. It's now available as a trainable ability. Okay, moving on to the Destruction Tree. A lot of stuff is the same as before, it's just been tweaked slightly. I do want to go over some of the more important changes. First of all, your Shadow Burn has been changed significantly. It can only be used while the target is in execute range, and you gain 3 Soul Shards instead of 1 when the target dies. And of course, it no longer costs a Soul Shard, which is the change that was made to all Soul Shard abilities. Next is Nether Ward. This is a replacement for Shadow Ward. It does the same thing, except instead of absorbing just Shadow, it absorbs all spell damage. Nether Protection is similar to the old Nether Protection, except it depends on your Nether Ward being up, and you can only gain the buff once per Nether Ward. And what that means is, since Nether Ward has a 30-second cooldown, if you pop Nether Ward and you get hit by some spell damage and your Nether Protection procs, after it wears off, you have to wait for your Nether Ward to come back up again before you can get that Nether Protection bonus again. Empowered Imp grants your Imp Firebolt a 4% chance to make your next Soulfire instant cast, so that just adds to the instant cast Soulfires along with your Soul Burn. That's definitely a great talent, even though it doesn't proc too often. When it does proc, it really makes a mark. Burning Embers. This is a dot that appears when you hit a target with a Soulfire or an Imp's Firebolt. According to the tooltip, it happens on every hit, but that tooltip's actually wrong. As I'm going to show you in this demo, it only actually works if you crit. So as you can see there, I did a regular hit and there's no dot. But here I critted and there is a dot, so this actually requires you to crit, so hopefully they'll clarify that tooltip in a future build. Next is Bane of Havoc. This is your third Bane ability, so it is mutually exclusive with your other two, Bane of Agony, Bane of Doom. Bane of Havoc is like an AoE ability, but it's kind of a reverse AoE. That's the only way I can explain it. Let's say you have a boss and a bunch of ads. You cast Bane of Havoc on the boss, and all the AoE you do the ads will also do damage to the boss, but it's 15% of the damage you deal. So if you have 10 ads, you hit them all with your Arena of Fire, then 15% of that damage is going to be redirected to the boss on top of the AoE you're already doing to him. So as you can see, that can be very useful in some situations. Even though it is situational, it's still a great ability to have. Okay, moving on to the Affliction tree. Improved Fear. This causes the target to be slowed by 30% after Fear wears off. So this is an extra slow in addition to your Curse of Exhaustion. Although they don't stack, you can have one target exhausted and one target feared. Next up we have Soul Swap, which has some interesting strategic value. What you do is you cast on your first target and it'll take away all of the dots that are on them. Then you cast on the second target and it'll move the dots over to them. So in other words, if you want to move your dots from one target to the other, I'll show you, it's pretty simple. It also does minor instant damage, but that's not really the point. Soulburn, Seed of Corruption. This makes your Seed of Corruption buffed by Soulburn. What it does is every time Seed of Corruption erupts, it spreads regular corruption around to every target nearby. So obviously this is a very powerful AoE. It just basically adds a dot on the end of your Seed of Corruption. So this is definitely a must-have. There's one last really interesting talent I want to show you, Jinx. Makes your Curse of Elements affect all enemy targets within a 20-yard range of the main target. That's very useful obviously for AoEing, for PvP, for a lot of things. It just saves you a lot of global cooldowns. Also for Curse of Weakness, you reduce the Rage, Runic Power, and so on regeneration of your target by 10%. So obviously that's a PvP, makes Curse of Weakness more attractive in PvP. Okay, that's it for Affliction. Moving on to Demonology, we have Dark Arts. This is basically a combination of all the various improved demon talents, well, at least for the ones that you're going to be using. Felguard, Felhunter, and Imp. Succubus and Voidwalker are unaffected because they're not really useful for this tree. Demonic Rebirth. If your demon is killed, you can recast it instantly. You can only do that once every 2 minutes. That goes very well with Master Summoner. Reduces the mana cost of your demon by 100%, and also reduces the cast time by 1 second. And you can get this with any spec. Impending Doom. Your spells, specifically Shadow Bolt and Incinerate, have a 15% chance to reduce the cooldown on your Metamorphosis. Hand of Gul'dan. It's a brand new single target ability. Even though the tooltip kind of makes it sound like it's AoE, it's actually not. You cast it on a single target, it drops a little fireball looking thing, hits a single target for shadow damage, and then it puts an aura on the ground called Curse of Gul'dan. The main ability, or the default ability of that curse, is that it causes your demons to have an increased critical strike chance of 10% on anything inside that range. So naturally that's for your Felguard and his little Whirlwind ability. Aura of Foreboding increases the power of your Curse of Gul'dan. Anything that's caught in it is rooted for 3 seconds. After that expires, they have 3 seconds to escape the curse, and it's a small area, it's only 4 yards, so it's not hard. But if they don't escape the curse, then they also get stunned. So as you can see, that can be very useful on really dumb enemies, players who don't know what they're doing, or perhaps mobs you're trying to AoE that are standing in one place. Helps them keep in one place so you can drop your Arena of Fire on them. Decimation, when the target is low on health, it increases the speed of your soul fires. Of course, you have to also cast an Incinerate to gain that buff, so that's very useful for targets that are very low on health. Inferno, this is a cool one. It allows you to cast Hellfire while moving, and also increases the radius. It goes well with Cremation, which increases the Hellfire damage by 30%. Peers are trying to make your Hellfire actually useful in this expansion. The secondary ability of Cremation is to cause your Hand of Gul'dan to make your Immolate refresh. I guess that's pretty nice. So let's see that Hellfire in action. As you can see, I can just run around while channeling it. Now you can't cast another spell while you're moving, or it'll stop the channel. But it's still pretty awesome. And for Hand of Gul'dan, I want to re-emphasize that this only does single target damage, but the curse that it drops is over an AoE. That's all for the Warlock. To recap, Soul Shards are now a resource like Holy Power, like combo points, instead of taking up inventory space. Your spells no longer cost Soul Shards except for your Soul Burn, which is your spell that enhances your... it's kind of like an amplify spell. And you can gain your Soul Shards back with Drain Soul, Soul Harvest, or Shadow Burn. Your Curse of Agony, Curse of Doom have been changed to Bane of Agony, Bane of Doom. Your Summon Infernal and Doomguard are actually useful now. And other than that, not a lot of changes to the trees. It's mainly just the Soul Shard thing that's going to affect you the most. Thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe, and check out the rest of our videos on World of Warcraft Cataclysm.